Tunistee, how are ye? Welcome back to the Candlelit Tales podcast, where we tell Irish myths set to live music. My name is Aaron, and this is a new series called the Fianna. If you want to hear about the reflections or the writing process of these episodes, we've put those episodes as exclusives for Patreon only. So you can join the Candlelit crew over on patreon.com/Candlelit Tales, or just follow the links below. Either way, we're going to sit back, relax, enjoy a story, the very first of a new series. Hey, Sarika, tell us a story, will you?
When Aodh Morna was a young man and came to the end of his fosterage, he found the choice laid out before him, stark and clear. So clear in his mind that it was a wonder to him that anyone would ever choose differently. He could go back home now to the family that he'd been born to, a family he had not seen since he was 7 years old and sent away for fostering. He could go back and he could take up responsibility. He could start learning about management and taxing and the distribution of resources and things that gave him a headache just to think about. Or he could do what most young men in his position did. He could stay wild for a while. He could join a Fianna for a few years. And that way, living outdoors every year from Bealtaine to Samhain, lodging from Samhain to Bealtaine, in the house of any lord or king he felt like, Aodh Morna could hone his skills as a warrior. And someday, when he was ready, he could go back to that life of responsibility, of confinement. It made him itch to think about it. But he was sure he'd been told that was because he was young. That with age would come an urge to settle, an urge to stay in one place. And so he joined a Fianna. And after a couple of years, his younger brother, Conan Whale, joined the same Fianna with him. And people started to call that Fianna Clan Morna, mostly on account of the two brothers. But some of their other relatives joined as well, so there was a truth to it. Clan Morna, a great Fianna that it was. And Aodh was their leader. They all acknowledged it. And if they hadn't, he'd have challenged them to a fight and he'd have won. Aodh was the best warrior that he had ever met. And most of his Fianna agreed with him. And they lived exactly the kind of life that he had hoped for, a life of variety, a life of excitement, a life of adventure. From Bealtaine to Samhain every single year, outside they would go, taking their leave of their hosts and going off into the wilderness, into the forests. And Aodh loved it. He loved the hunting, he loved living off the land, he loved the forests and the wild places. He loved the high summer with the light that never quite left the landscape. He loved the crack and the ceol with the other members of the Fianna. And they would hunt. And they would catch their food and they would build a fullacht fia to cook it in. And they would eat meat out of their hands in the forest by the bank of a running stream, and the juices would run down into his beard, and he would dip the water from the stream to wash his beard clean and drink it down as well. And they would sleep under the stars. And there was adventure every day was different. They were never settled in one place for long, they always moved, Clan Morna. Moved from place to place, from hill to hill, roving around, doing as they pleased, following their fancy, following what called them. Sometimes that call led them to a strange adventure, and sometimes that call led them to a fight. And one day, on a hunt, Aodh had sight of a deer. He was following it on foot, had been stalking it for a long time now. And he was hidden down and hunkered, and he was making ready to make a cast with his spear when he heard a crack of a slingshot. And that deer, his deer, buckled onto its knees and keeled over dead. And then Aodh realised he was not the only hunter in the woods that day. He called out a challenge, and the challenge was answered in a wary voice. "Who goes there?" called Aodh. The reply he got was Aodh of the Fianna clan Basna. Now Aodh had heard of the Fianna clan Basna. His lot were a great group, but this lot had their fans as well, had their followers and their supporters. They were supposed to be handy enough. And this Aodh, their leader, well, Aodh had heard that he was a great hunter, as evidenced by the deer now lying between them. But Aodh wasn't sure he was quite the same fighter that Aodh was, this Aodh. And so Aodh stood first, knowing that this Aodh might have a line of sight on him, but also not wanting to be seen a coward. He called out, "I am Aodh MacMorna, of the Fianna clan Morna. Well met?" And Aodh called back, "Well met." And Aodh saw him stand, and he felt a part of him relax. This man was tall and slender, where he was broad and thick with corded muscle, and he looked fit enough like any man of a Fianna who spent his summers out in the wilderness. But Aodh knew the other man might have something of an advantage in reach, but you'd need two of him to make half of Aodh. In a fight, Aodh had no doubt which of them would prevail, and he felt a bit better about himself, although they weren't in grappling range yet. He could see that Aodh was standing back. He could see a certain nervousness in the man. And he decided in that moment to be the one to reach out, to be the one to smile and offer a hand of friendship to Aodh. He could see Aodh relax. He could see the relief that washed over him. And the two of them got to talking. There Fianna caught up with them, Clan Morna and Clan Basna. And if they'd met under different circumstances, they might indeed have fought. But here were their two leaders, making friends. And so Clan Morna and Clan Basna, though wary of one another, well, they built the Fulucht Fia together by the banks of the river, and the two Fianna settled in. There was an edge of competitiveness to the stories that they told. One time, one group fought off 100 men, and it just so happened that the other fought off actually 300, so it happens. A great hunt of one would be superseded by a greater hunt of another. "Oh, a boar ye hunted, was it? Well, there was a time that I fought an ullfished from the other world itself." But there was no real malice in it, not really. It was good, in fact, Gull thought, to meet others like-minded. And it was good to sharpen themselves on each other. It was good to see. Clan Basna seemed to be better at the hunting part. Clan Morna, more militaristic, more skilled in the fight itself. But those were two sides to every Fianna, and it seemed to Aodh that they could get along. So some days passed, with the two Fianna commingling, still a little wary, still a little standoffish with each other, but Aodh could see, friendships beginning to happen, growing from acquaintances, tricks they were showing each other. His brother Conan muttered to him that no good would come of this. "They're lulling us," said he. "Lulling us so that they can turn around and attack us." And Aodh was used to his brother's grumblings, used to his brother's mistrust of anyone who wasn't them, used to ignoring him too. And after a time, Ull approached him, shyly now with something on his mind. And Ull asked Aodh what were his plans for the future. Now Aodh thought about that. Aodh had long thought about that. He and his brother had picked a different king to lodge with every winter. He and his brother had gone from king and lord and king. And everyone they lodged with they owed fealty to by custom for that winter time, from Samhain to Bealtaine. And if those kings had asked, they would have gone into battle for them. That was the role of a Fianna. That was their duty. But in all that time, Aodh told Ull, he'd never met a king he wanted to serve. He'd never seen a household he'd wanted to stay in. He'd never seen anything that they had in their great halls with all their treasure that was more precious to him than the hunt for the wild boar or the clash of shields and spears going into a battle. And Ull looked at him and nodded. And Ull said, "I've been thinking about this. I've been thinking about Fianna and Fianna. And I've been thinking about the halls of kings and lords. And the thing I keep coming back to is, why do we have to go back? Why should we have to go back? Why not stay forever in the Fianna? Why not join together, you and I, Clan Basna and Clan Morna, the two greatest Fianna in Ireland? That way we can stay here forever. We can live our whole lives in the wilderness. We can swear to each other bonds of brotherhood stronger than blood. We can pledge ourselves to what a Fianna really means. Now the others were listening as well, listening as Ull spoke. And Aodh realised that Ull had something else he didn't quite have. That silver tongue, the way of swaying people, of speaking your dreams aloud so that they caught in others' imaginations. For Ull was putting words to things that he himself only felt and had never found the words to describe. He found himself nodding, and he saw his men nodding along as well. Clan Morna, all of them wild and tough and rugged now. And Ull went on. He spoke of a Fianna that would encompass all the island. A Fianna made of warriors who never went back. Men and women like themselves, who did not want to return and did not have to, who never gave their service to a lord or a king for longer than 6 months out of the year, but instead looked at the whole island, protected everyone equally from marauders, from invaders, from the monsters of the other world, from whatever threat arose. What great glory there would be in that. What a wonderful purpose. What a way to spend a life together in the wilderness. For he had seen as well as they had seen. This land of kings on every hill and lords in every tua, all of them fighting and struggling and raiding against each other. No harmony in it. No peace. For they could not put aside their infighting. What if Fianna joined together and they all dedicated themselves to protecting what was best about this land? This island of long, hot summer days, and ancient, beautiful forests, of great cliffs and crashing waves, of rivers filled with salmon and trout, of the lakes and the hills and the lonely bogs. And if they treated the lords and the kings as just a part of that which they protected, then they could stay. They could stay wild forever, never having to return. Aodh found himself swayed by the poetry of Aodh, by the picture he painted of high deeds and great glory won. And it was true. It was as he said, there were always bandits. There were always invaders, and there were always threats from the other world coming through, threatening the people of Ireland. And why couldn't they set themselves up as an army to defend everyone and anyone? And why couldn't they, as Aodh said, throw their ranks open, let anyone skilled enough join, no matter what their birth? It appealed to him. And all that long summer, they stayed together, Aodh and Aodh. And even Conan Whale left aside his muttering, as Clan Basna and Clan Morna started to call themselves simply Fianna. The days started to grow colder, as they did every summer. And they decided to go their separate ways for the winter time, not to put too much pressure on one king to lodge all of them together. They made a great troop now, Fianna. And when Aodh had departed, Conan and Aodh got to talking about where they would go. Which king they would go to this winter, which lord. For they'd lodged with many in the past, and none they remembered with any great fondness. But hold on, Conan said. Are we not staying wild forever? Is that not what Aodh was talking about? If we're to be wild, let's be wild. Why do we need to go and pledge fealty to a king or a lord for the winter? Why do we need to go at the ending of the year and beg a place by a hearth until Bealtaine rolls around again? If we're to be Fianna, let's take what we want. Let's take what we need. I say we raid Aodh. Take it for ourselves. Make our home there for the winter. And come Bealtaine, we'll burn it and be on our way. And if they want us not to raid them again next winter, they can pay us a tribute to stay far from their doors, and we'll find somewhere else. Now Gull thought to himself that there was something in that went against Aodh's high-minded speeches, but he couldn't quite put it into words. And he thought of all of those kings and all of those halls and all of those lords, the ones he'd been raised in, the one he was fostered in, the little love he had for them and their ways. He found something in him liked that idea. Wild, yes. Wild and selfish and cruel as winter. And after all, why shouldn't he? Who was going to stop Aodh Morna from taking what he wanted?